A match for the Marquess. Chapter 1. A proposal most improper. The season had scarcely begun, yet all of London already spoke of only one gentleman, Adrian Ravenshaw, the Marquess of Densmore, handsome, wealthy, dangerously elusive, and therefore the most pursued bachelor in the ton. Mothers sharpened their smiles as if preparing for battle. Daughters trilled prettily whenever he passed. Even widows adjusted their mourning if it meant catching his eye. The Marquess, for his part, bore this adulation with the weary civility of a man long accustomed to being hunted. On a warm April afternoon, he stood in the long gallery of Densmore House, watching the parade of callers, waiting to thrust yet another hopeful young lady into his path. He had already endured a morning of simpering admiration. Now his patience teetered on the brink of collapse. "Your mother insists you attend the Claremont ball tomorrow," said his cousin, Lord Harbury, sauntering in with a glass of brandy. "She fears you will be abducted by fortune hunters if you continue to hide at home." "I should be so fortunate," Adrian muttered. "An abduction would be quieter than this." Harbury chuckled. "If only you would choose a bride, a discreet engagement would silence the lot of them." "But that is precisely the problem," Adrian said with a sigh. "The moment I look at any young lady for more than 2 seconds, the entire ton proclaims her my soon-to-be Marchioness. A single waltz becomes a declaration of intent. A dance card signed in haste becomes a scandal brewing." He raked a hand through his dark hair and exhaled. "I need a solution that makes me appear taken, without being trapped." Harbury raised a brow. "Taken? By whom?" Adrian had no answer, until fate, in the guise of a very unexpected young woman, supplied one. At that very same hour, Miss Lucy Trent stood in the marble foyer of Lady Grafton's townhouse, clutching a small bundle of letters and praying her errand would be finished quickly. The servants had accidentally given her the wrong direction, and she found herself momentarily adrift in a house where she had no business being. Lucy had long since grown accustomed to misplaced dignity. Once, she had been the cherished daughter of a gentleman scholar. Now, after her father's untimely death and her mother's illness, she lived in discreet poverty on the edges of society. She took small work, copying letters, organising libraries, coaching young ladies in French, anything that allowed her to preserve the fragile illusion of gentility. She was on her way out, hoping to find someone who could direct her to the proper door, when she collided with a solid figure. Strong hands steadied her. "My apologies," she gasped, stepping back. "No harm done," came the quiet, amused reply. She looked up, and her breath caught. The Marquess of Densmore stood before her, impeccably dressed, every inch the aristocratic paragon. His dark eyes regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and something like relief, as though she had rescued him rather than the other way round. "Are you acquainted with our hostess?" he asked. "No, my lord, I am here on an errand." She blushed, straightened her simple gown, and tried not to appear overwhelmed. "Ah." His expression warmed. "Then you are in the same predicament as I, a guest who dearly wishes to depart and cannot." Lucy blinked. "You wish to leave, my lord?" "Desperately, yet I find escape impossible." His tone held wry suffering. "I am besieged." She bit back a laugh. "I cannot imagine you besieged by anything." "On the contrary," he said, leaning slightly closer, as if confiding a secret. "Every matchmaking mama in London lies in wait for me here." Lucy's brows lifted. Ah, a formidable foe indeed. He smiled, truly smiled, at her dry tone. Then inspiration sparked in his expression, quick and unmistakable. "Forgive me, Miss—" "Trent. Lucy Trent." "Miss Trent." He inclined his head. "You have the appearance of a lady whom society has inexplicably overlooked. Intelligent, composed, and entirely uninterested in being ridiculous." "Thank you?" She wasn't quite certain whether that was a compliment. "I wonder," he continued slowly, "if you might assist me." Lucy stared. "Assist you? My lord, I cannot imagine how." Adrian glanced over his shoulder. A pair of ambitious matrons lurked nearby, clearly preparing an ambush. He lowered his voice. "I need a shield," he said. "A false attachment. Someone who will accompany me to a handful of events. Someone who can converse intelligently, deflect gossip, and accept that my interest is only a ruse." Lucy's heart thumped. A ruse?" "A temporary arrangement," he said, voice steady. "You would benefit as well. My mother, the Dowager Marchioness, has funds at her disposal. I would see you compensated for your time." Her face flushed. "You mean, hire me to pretend affection? Like one might hire a... She could scarcely say the word. "An actress," he supplied gently. "No impropriety, Miss Trent. Simply company, conversation, a shield against the ton's greed." Lucy swallowed. "Why ask me?" "Because you looked at me," he said quietly, "and I felt no calculation in your gaze, and because you seem too sensible to mistake this for anything but a bargain." His words struck deep, honest, unexpected, unsettling. "I am not certain I can act," she confessed. "Then we shall simply be ourselves," he said with a small smile, "and let society believe what it wishes." Lucy hesitated. She desperately needed money for her mother's care. The Marquess's offer, however outrageous, was an opportunity. Yet the danger was obvious. Her reputation, already delicate, could be crushed by a single misstep. She lifted her chin. "Very well, my lord. I accept." Relief flickered in his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Trent. You have saved my sanity." She arched a brow. "I hope that is not an overstatement." "My dear Miss Trent," he murmured, offering his arm, "you have no notion how perilously close I was to despair." Against her better judgment and her anxious heart, Lucy placed her hand atop his arm. As they walked toward the exit, heads began to turn. Whispers unfurled like ribbons in their wake. "Who is she?" "The Marquess is escorting her." "Has he chosen someone at last?" Lucy felt her cheeks warm, but Adrian leaned down almost imperceptibly. "First test passed," he said under his breath. "They are already drawing conclusions." "And that pleases you," she murmured, "immensely." He led her out into the fresh air, as though they had known each other for years. Lucy Trent knew perfectly well she had accepted a foolish arrangement. What she could not know, what neither of them yet realized, was that pretending affection was far more dangerous than anything the matchmaking mammas could devise. For it would not be long before the Marquess stopped pretending entirely. Chapter 2. Terms of the arrangement. The Claremont ball was, according to the Morning Gazette, to be the crowning glory of the early season. Every chandelier in the Claremont townhouse blazed with candlelight. The polished floor of the ballroom shone like a mirror. Silk and satin rustled in a harmony of vanity. Miss Lucy Trent, standing at the top of the staircase, felt as though she had been set down in some glittering dream to which she did not properly belong. Her gown was plain compared to the confections around her. Soft white muslin, cleverly altered by her own hands, with a ribbon of deep blue at the waist. She wore no jewels, save a small silver locket that had been her mother's. Yet she held herself straight, chin high, refusing to shrink. At the bottom of the staircase, the Marquess of Densmore waited. "Miss Trent," he said as she descended, and there was something in his eyes, approval perhaps, or simple relief, that steadied her nerves. "My lord," she replied, curtsying. He offered his arm. "Shall we?" As they entered the ballroom together, conversation faltered. A wave of speculation ran through the crowd. "That is not Lady Amelia, nor Miss Cartwright. Who can she be?" Lucy heard it all. She also felt the subtle tightening of Adrian's arm beneath her hand, as though he braced himself against the onslaught. "Remember," he murmured, bending his head so that only she could hear. "We are merely doing what everyone expects from us, only on our own terms." "And what are those terms, my lord?" she asked lightly, though her heart beat too swiftly. "First," he said, "you must allow me to dance at least twice with you this evening." She gave him a sidelong look. "Twice? Is that wise?" "I have observed the ton enough to know that 2 dances with the same lady are considered significant." "Precisely," he said, eyes glinting. "If we are to avert an army of simpering debutantes, we must offer them something conclusive to gossip about." Lucy almost laughed. Almost. "Very well. I shall sacrifice myself upon the altar of your peace of mind." "Heroism looks well on you, Miss Trent," he replied, sounding amused and, if she was not deceived, faintly charmed. They danced a country dance first. Lucy had not set foot in a ballroom in years, yet the steps came back to her with gratifying ease. Adrian proved an excellent partner, attentive, steady, never permitting her to doubt herself. As they turned and crossed, hands brushing, Lucy found an unfamiliar warmth unfolding in her chest. It was only the exercise, the music, the excitement. It must be. Between sets, the onslaught began. Lady Harbury bore down upon them with the force of an invading ship, her feathers trembling. "My dear Densmore," she cried, "you are quite wicked to have hidden this charming young lady from us. Miss Trent, is it? A relation of the Trents of Surrey, perhaps?" Lucy summoned every ounce of composure. "No, ma'am. My father was Mr. James Trent, formerly of Oxford." "Oxford?" Lady Harbury repeated, as if the word pained her. "Ah, a scholar. How, edifying." Adrian spoke before Lucy could feel herself diminished. Mr. Trent was well respected. His daughter shares his intelligence. His tone admitted no contradiction. Lady Harbury's eyes sharpened. "Indeed. Well, we must not keep you from your admirers, Densmore. There are so many young ladies longing for an introduction." Her smile grew brittle. "But I see you are quite occupied." "We are perfectly content," Adrian said, with a politeness edged in steel. Lady Harbury retreated, thwarted for the moment. "That was unwise," Lucy murmured once she had gone. "She will not forgive you for dismissing her arsenal of daughters." "Let her be offended," he replied. "I have hired my protection. I intend to use it." "Hired," Lucy repeated softly. The word pricked. As though sensing it, he cleared his throat. "We should speak plainly, Miss Trent. After tonight the rumours will spread. The Ton will consider you marked. There must be recompense." Lucy kept her gaze fixed upon the dancers. "I am aware of the risk." "I will not have you endure it without advantage," he said firmly. "My mother has a small estate in Kent, Hollymere Cottage. It brings in a modest income. She uses it currently for charitable pensions. I intend to ask her to assign it to you at the close of our arrangement, if you wish it, or to place funds sufficient to secure your future in the funds in your name." She turned to him, startled. "My lord, that is far too much." "It is no more than your due," he interrupted. "If I rend your reputation to tatters in the eyes of society—" "You do not," she said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "I walk into this with my eyes open." "Even so," he said, "there must be terms. You shall attend with me a select number of balls, routs, and dinners over the next weeks. We shall converse, dance, stroll in full view of the world. We shall allow them to believe there is an understanding between us. Then, when the season wanes, we shall drift apart. You will retire to the country with a secure income. I shall be left in peace." Lucy folded her hands tightly against the sudden ache that seized her. and no one will be the worse for it." He hesitated. "That is the hope." She forced a smile. "An eminently sensible arrangement, my lord." He looked at her then, not as the Marquess surveying an employee, but as a man seeing a woman who had just agreed to risk her good name for his comfort. Something flared in his gaze and was quickly banked. "The second dance, Miss Trent?" he asked, offering his hand. This time it was a waltz. She had not waltzed since before her father's death. The intimate measure of it, the proximity, the long, slow turns, these belonged to another life. Yet she placed her hand in his, and his other hand settled at her waist with a touch at once respectful and astonishingly sure. As they began to move, the world narrowed to music and his steady presence. Lucy could see the line of his jaw, the faint shadow where he had shaved that morning, the small crease at his brow, which appeared whenever someone particularly foolish addressed him. "You dance beautifully," he said quietly. "I had an excellent teacher," she replied. "My father insisted that no accomplishment was beneath intellectual notice, even dancing. He said rhythm and mathematics were cousins." Adrian smiled. "I should have liked your father." "I think he would have liked you," she said, surprising herself with the truth of it. His gaze held hers a moment longer than was strictly proper. The intricate pattern of the waltz carried them round and round, closer to the chandeliers, further from the sight of others, yet wholly within the glittering cage of the ballroom. Lucy felt something dangerous stir beneath her ribs, something that had no place in a discussion of terms. When the set ended, he bowed over her hand with perfect correctness. "Thank you, Miss Trent. For tonight. For all of it." "It is nothing, my lord," she lied, drawing her hand back before she could notice how reluctant she was to lose the support of his fingers. As the evening progressed, the scheme worked precisely as designed. The boldest mamas ceased their advances, substituting assessing glances at Lucy instead. Young ladies whispered and darted curious looks at her. Adrian remained by Lucy's side with deliberate constancy. Lord Harbury joined them briefly, eyes alight with mischief. "Cousin, you have set the room ablaze," he murmured. "They are already discussing your mysterious Miss Trent as though she were the Queen of Sheba." Adrian's lip curled faintly. "Let them." Harbury bowed to Lucy. "If you are indeed the miracle worker who has tamed this fellow's pursuit, Miss Trent, I am entirely in your debt. Perhaps you might turn your talents to my mother next season." "I fear I should charge ruinous fees," Lucy replied, surprising them both into laughter. It was, in every respect, a successful debut of their arrangement. And yet, when Lucy climbed into the modest hired carriage that would take her back to her lodgings at the end of the night, the lilting strains of the waltz still echoed in her ears, and the warmth of Adrian's hand at her waist lingered far too vividly. She told herself it was only the excitement, only the novelty of being treated, if only for one evening, as if she belonged. But as the carriage rattled through the darkened streets, Lucy Trent wrapped her arms around herself and stared out at the lamplit night, knowing with a clarity that chilled her that she had entered a bargain in which her heart had never been listed among the negotiable items, yet it was already in peril. Chapter 3. The Cost of Pretense. The weeks that followed were a whirl such as Lucy had never known. Dinners, musicales, afternoon rides in Hyde Park, always with Adrian at her side, always under the watchful eyes of society. Invitations, once scarce, multiplied. Ladies who would previously have overlooked her now nodded with cautious politeness. Gentlemen bowed. She was examined from every angle like a curious new specimen, and everywhere the conclusion was the same. The Marquess of Densmore had chosen. He did nothing to contradict the assumption. If anything, he encouraged it. His attention to her was marked and consistent. He set her in places of honour, engaged her in conversation with the ease of long acquaintance, and once, at a small musicale, he took the book of songs from a blushing girl and asked Lucy to choose the piece instead. "Your taste is better than mine," he said aloud, as if it were a matter of course. Lucy felt the weight of a dozen jealous stares and wished wildly that she could sink through the floor. The Dowager Marchioness requested to meet her. The summons to Densmore House arrived on heavy cream paper, the script elegant and imperious. Lucy took it in trembling hands. She could hardly refuse. Adrian awaited her in the grand entrance hall when she arrived. "Do not look as though you are going to your execution," he said softly, taking her cloak. "My mother has sharp eyes, but not sharp teeth." "I am not certain I believe you," she murmured. He smiled faintly, then sobered. "She knows nothing of our arrangement. To her you are simply the lady with whom I spend an inordinate amount of time." "Which is itself suspicious," Lucy pointed out. "Indisputably," he conceded, "but she has too much pride to press me too openly." He offered his arm, and together they ascended to the blue drawing-room, where the dowager sat in a high-backed chair like a queen upon her throne. She was a slender woman, her hair entirely silver, dressed in shades of dove grey and lavender. Her eyes, like her son's, were dark and keen. "Miss Trent," she said when the introductions were performed, "pray, be seated." Lucy obeyed, painfully conscious of the humble quality of her gown, of the mending at the cuff she hoped would not be noticed. "I understand you are the daughter of a scholar," the dowager began, folding her hands atop her cane. "Oxford, was it not?" "Yes, your ladyship. My father was a tutor of languages." The Marchioness inclined her head. "A respectable occupation." Her gaze sharpened. "Your circumstances at present, however, are modest." Lucy's throat tightened. "They are, ma'am. My mother is unwell. I support us, as best I can." "By engaging in employment," the dowager said, not as a question but a statement of fact. Lucy's cheeks burned. "I give lessons, assist with correspondence, small tasks, nothing that intrudes upon propriety." "A gentlewoman fallen upon hard times," the older woman mused. "London is full of such stories, though one rarely sees them so plainly acknowledged." She looked at Adrian then. "My son has always had an inconvenient fondness for honesty." Adrian's mouth quirked. "I was under the impression you found my silence more troublesome than my honesty." "Do not quibble," she retorted, then returned her gaze to Lucy. "You are aware, Miss Trent, that the world already considers you attached to my son." Lucy swallowed. "I am aware that people talk, ma'am." "What they say," the dowager continued calmly, "is not yet a formal betrothal, but it is something that, for a lady in your situation, could become dangerous." Lucy's fingers twisted in her lap. "Yes, your ladyship." "Yet you do not appear to be a fool," the Marchioness went on. "Which leads me to one of two conclusions. Either you consider the risk a price worth paying, or my son has given you reason to believe your future is secure." Lucy glanced reflexively at Adrian. He held himself very still, his expression unreadable. "I do not seek to pry into confidences," the dowager said more softly. "But I have buried a husband, and endured a great many scandals in my time. I would not willingly see another woman hurt by the games society plays." Lucy's voice, when it emerged, was steady. "Your ladyship, whatever is between your son and myself is not—" She faltered, then chose the safe word. "Not lightly undertaken. I do not regard it as mere sport." The dowager studied her for a long moment, her lined face thoughtful. Then she nodded, slowly. "Very well," she said. "You may pour the tea." It was not an explicit approval, but neither was it a rejection. Lucy took the small mercy gratefully. Later, as Adrian escorted her back to her hackney, he said quietly, "You acquitted yourself admirably. My mother is not easily touched." Untouched, Lucy echoed. She has taken your part, he said, half smiling, which means she will tear out the tongue of the first person who speaks ill of you in her hearing. Lucy laughed despite everything. A fearsome ally. You and I have need of those, he replied. Their alliance, however, was not without its frailties. The first real crack appeared at a garden party in Kensington. The day was pleasant, the lawns overflowing with gaily dressed guests. Adrian had left Lucy's side briefly to speak with an acquaintance, leaving her under a lime tree with a glass of lemonade. A gentleman approached, a fair-haired baronet of amiable mien, Sir Edward Trowbridge. Miss Trent, he said, bowing, might I claim the honour of a stroll? I understand the Rose Walk is quite worth seeing, and I should like an excuse to escape Lady Bernard's opinions on the weather. Lucy hesitated. The arrangement with Adrian did not include explicit prohibitions on conversing with other men. Indeed, that would have been intolerable. Still, she was acutely conscious of the eyes upon her. I should be delighted, Sir Edward, she said at last, allowing herself one small act of normalcy. They walked. Sir Edward spoke with easy kindness, asking after her mother's health when he learned of it, listening without condescension. For the first time in weeks, Lucy felt like herself rather than a piece on a chessboard. Returning to the lawn, she glimpsed Adrian at a distance. His jaw was set, his gaze fixed upon her and Sir Edward with an intensity that made her steps falter. When she reached him, he spoke with deceptive lightness. You have been long in the Rose Walk, Miss Trent. Her spine stiffened. Not so long as to be remarked, I hope. Oh, it was remarked, he said. Sir Edward is not unknown for enthusiasm. She stared at him. You object to my speaking with him. Object, he repeated. Why should I object? I have no claim upon you. The words were cool. The muscle ticking in his cheek said otherwise. Something sharp pierced her. No, my lord, you have only hired my company after all. I must remember that each time I take a step. His eyes flashed. That is not what I— Densmore, drawled a familiar voice. Lord Harbury sauntered up, oblivious to the tension. Your little experiment is succeeding so well that Lady Bernard has wagered you will be married by Michaelmas. I suppose congratulations are in order. Adrian's lips thinned. On what, precisely? On the neatness of the arrangement, Harbury said with a grin. To engage a lady of no fortune to play the devoted admirer, no dower to haggle over, no ambitious relatives to appease, only your own conscience to soothe. Lucy went very still. Harbury, realizing too late that she stood close enough to hear, blanched. I say, Miss Trent, you must not— Think ill of my cousin, Adrian cut in hastily, but the damage had been done. Lucy felt as though the ground had opened beneath her feet. A lady of no fortune, engaged to play the devoted admirer. Every fear she had suppressed since that first meeting surged up, naked, humiliating. Is that how you describe me when I am not in the room, my lord? She asked, her voice low. Adrian flinched. Lucy, Miss Trent, it was a clumsy jest, nothing more. Harbury speaks without thought. But you instructed him, she said. You must have explained our terms. The word tasted bitter now. I see I have been very convenient. It is not— Pray, do not trouble yourself, she said, drawing herself up. Her heart pounded, her hands shook. You are quite correct. You have no claim upon me, nor I upon you. She curtsied perfectly, as if they were strangers. I believe our arrangement must end, my lord. Immediately. He stared at her, colour draining from his face. End? Lucy, the season is not yet half over. The gossip will be what it has always been, she said steadily, though her voice trembled. Cruel, unjust. I shall bear it if I must, but I will not bear being discussed as a convenience between gentlemen. "Miss Trent," Harbury said, stricken, "I meant no harm." "Then you have succeeded remarkably ill," she replied. She turned and walked away across the lawn, every step an effort. She knew perfectly well that half the company watched her go, that tomorrow the whispers would multiply tenfold. But at least, she told herself fiercely, she would still have one thing intact, the small shred of self-respect that refused to be bartered, even for a cottage in Kent. Behind her, Adrian stood rooted to the grass, his carefully constructed scheme crumbling around him. For the first time since their bargain began, he realized that what he feared most was no longer the Tun's matrons, nor the threat of persistent debutantes. It was losing Lucy Trent, and discovering too late that somewhere between acting and reality, he had ceased to distinguish between the two. Chapter 4. A Match in Truth. 2 days later, the Tun's appetite for scandal was amply satisfied. The whispers began in drawing rooms and spilled out into the streets. "Miss Trent stormed away from him at Lady Westcomb's garden party, did you hear? Some say she had expected an offer and was disappointed. Others say she had schemed to entrap him and failed. Typical of such girls, no fortune, but all ambition." Within a week, Lucy's name was on more tongues than ever, yet now it was accompanied by pitying sneers. She retreated. Her modest lodgings off Russell Square became a fortress. She refused all but her most necessary engagements, took on more copying work by candlelight, and stretched every coin to cover her mother's medicines. The small sum Adrian had insisted she accept as an advance payment sat untouched in a drawer. She could not bring herself to spend money earned as a convenience. Her mother, frail and often confused, watched her with anxious eyes. "You are troubled, my love," Mrs. Trent said one evening, reaching for Lucy's hand. "Is it work?" Lucy hesitated. She could not burden her mother with the full ugliness of gossip. "It is only that I was foolish," she said gently. "I allowed myself to be drawn into a world that was not mine. It has consequences." Her mother's fingers tightened. "You are not foolish. You are brave. Your father always said you had more sense than he." Lucy laughed weakly. "Papa's faith in me was boundless." "As is mine," Mrs. Trent murmured, closing her eyes. Lucy sat beside the bed, long after her mother slept, staring at the small fire dwindling in the hearth. Her chest ached, in a way that had nothing to do with money or reputation, and everything to do with dark eyes that had once looked at her as though she were the only person in a crowded room. It was absurd to miss him. More absurd, perhaps, that she missed not the Marquess, but the man who had confessed exhaustion with the season, who had laughed at her sharp little observations, who had spoken of her father with genuine respect. "You cannot miss what was only pretense," she told herself sternly. Her heart, stubborn thing, disagreed. Across town, in Densmore House, the atmosphere was equally strained. The Dowager Marchioness regarded her son over the rim of her teacup. "You look abominable," she observed. "Have you taken to wrestling bears in Hyde Park?" Adrian, who had not slept properly in several nights, scowled. "Do not exaggerate, mother." "I never exaggerate," she said serenely. "You are pale, short-tempered, and entirely insufferable. All symptoms of a guilty conscience, or an unfortunate indigestion. Which is it?" He stared into the fire. "I behaved abominably," he said at last. "That is all." "Towards Miss Trent," she said, as if confirming a deduction. "So it would appear, given that she has vanished from every invitation where once she was certain to attend." The guilt which had gnawed at him since the garden party flared anew. "I never meant her to be hurt," he said hoarsely. "The arrangement was my idea. I told myself it would protect us both." "Protect?" His mother's eyebrows snapped together. "From what, precisely? A little discomfort? A few tiresome callers?" "Good heavens, Adrian, you have navigated parliamentary debate and estate disputes. Could you not survive a season without sacrificing a woman's reputation on the altar of your convenience?" He winced. It was not like that, not at first. She snorted. It is always not at first with men. Then one discovers that the thing they did not intend at first has been done all the same. Adrian rose abruptly and crossed to the mantel, bracing his hands upon it. I find, he said slowly, that what I mind most is not the gossip. It is that she believes herself merely hired, that she believes I saw her as nothing more than a tool. And did you? His mother asked quietly. He closed his eyes. Images flooded his mind. Lucy laughing under the chandeliers, Lucy pouring tea with unshaken composure under his mother's scrutiny, Lucy walking away across a sunlit lawn with her head high, even as the world sharpened its knives. No, he said, the word torn from him. I did not. Somewhere, while I was rejoicing in the peace she brought me, I ceased to know where the pretense ended. He took a shuddering breath. I love her. The dowager was silent for a long moment. Then she said, in a tone oddly gentle, Well, that at least is honest. He gave a short, mirthless laugh. What good is honesty when I have already ruined her? Ruined, she repeated sharply. Has some physical harm befallen her? Did you seduce her in a conservatory and leave her weeping among the geraniums? Mother! Do not be dramatic, she said briskly. You have not ruined her. You have placed her in a precarious position, true, but precariousness can be remedied. She tapped her cane against the carpet. You are a marquess, Adrian. You possess land, wealth, influence, and, rarest of all, the ability to admit you are wrong. Use them. How? He demanded. Begin, she said, by going to her. Speak to her, not to the ton. If she will not hear you, then you may address the ton. He eyed her warily. You are suggesting I propose marriage. I am suggesting, said the dowager, that you rectify the damage you have done, and in the process secure your own happiness, which you have for years stubbornly refused to do. If you call that a proposal, so be it. And if she refuses me? He asked quietly. His mother's gaze did not soften. Then you will live with the knowledge that, for once, a woman of sense deemed you unworthy. It will be excellent for your character. Lucy did not learn of the brewing storm until it broke over her head. She was returning from an apothecary's shop one afternoon when her small maid, Bess, met her breathlessly at the door. Miss, the most noble carriage has just gone past twice, I swear it. The neighbours are at the windows. They say it belongs to a lord. Lucy's heart kicked painfully. Many lords have carriages, Bess. But this one stopped, the girl persisted, and his lordship asked particular for you. I told him you was out, for you were, but he said he would return. Lucy's hand tightened around her reticule. Did he give his name? Bess's eyes shone. The Marquess of Densmore, miss. Lucy's insides turned to water. Oh, she whispered. He returned sooner than she had time to gather her wits. The knock at the door shook the little house. Lucy had barely removed her bonnet before Bess appeared again, face flushed. He's here, Miss Trent. In person. Lucy's first instinct was to flee, to escape by the back door, to hide until the carriage wheels rattled away. But pride, stubborn companion, held her ground. Very well, she said. Show him into the parlour. The parlour was a small, neat room with faded chintz curtains and a threadbare rug. Adrian seemed incongruously large within it, his perfectly tailored coat at odds with the modest surroundings. He stood when she entered, his eyes searching her face. Miss Trent, he said, bowing, thank you for receiving me. I had little opportunity to refuse, she replied, hands clasped tightly before her. Your carriage would have caused a scene whether or not I opened the door. A shadow of humour flickered in his gaze. Yes. That was intentional. She stared. You mean to expose me to more talk? I mean, he said steadily, to change its direction. He reached into his coat and drew out the folded paper she recognized with a jolt, the one she had refused to touch, containing the details of the funds he had arranged in her name. You have not used a farthing of this, he said. My solicitor confirms it. I did not consider it mine, she said, lifting her chin. It was payment for a role I could no longer perform. He flinched. You are right to be angry with me. I allowed Harbury's careless words to stand. I did not correct him as I ought. For that, and for every careless thing I did or failed to do, I beg your pardon. It is not my pardon the world requires, my lord, she said. It is my reputation. He took a step closer. Then let us address both. There was something in his face she had not seen before, a nakedness, a vulnerability that stripped away the Marquess's polished armour and left only the man. Lucy, he said quietly, and her heart lurched at the sound of her name on his lips. When we began this folly, I told myself I was buying peace. I did not admit that, from the moment you collided with me in Lady Grafton's hallway, I felt something I had not expected. Respect, curiosity, a sense that when you looked at me, you did not see a title or a fortune, but merely a man in need of rescue. She lowered her gaze. You overstate the matter. I do not, he said simply. You have stood beside me in rooms full of people who would use me for their own advancement, and you have asked nothing for yourself. You have faced their scrutiny without the armour of wealth or name. You have more courage than any 10 men in that world. Courage, she said bitterly, or foolishness. The distinction is often made only after one knows the outcome. Then allow me to prove that it was courage, he replied. He drew a breath. Marry me, Lucy. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. The world seemed to tilt, the small parlour blurred. You cannot be serious, she whispered. I have never been more serious, he said. I came here knowing that if you refused me, I would deserve it. But I could not bear to leave matters as they stand. I love you. That is not a part of the scheme. It is the one thing in this absurd masquerade that is wholly true. Her eyes filled, to her mortification. Love, she repeated. You speak of love now, when the world already believes me a schemer who tried to entrap you. His jaw tightened. The world believes what it is told. I intend to tell it a different story. He glanced towards the window. At this moment, no less than 3 discreetly positioned gossips are observing my carriage outside your door. When I leave here, I will not skulk away. I will go directly to Lady Harbury's, to Lady Bernard's, to every tongue that has wagged against you, and I will make my intentions known. She stared. You would announce our engagement? If you accept me, he said. If you do not, I will simply announce my unworthiness and beg your pardon in front of them all. It will ruin my peace for years, but it will at least cease to be solely your burden. A watery laugh escaped her. You are quite mad. Undoubtedly, he agreed. You must decide if you are willing to share the condition. Silence fell. The fire crackled softly. A carriage rumbled past outside. In the adjoining room, her mother coughed in her sleep. Lucy's mind raced over all that had passed, the bargain, the dances, the humiliations, the small kindnesses. She recalled the way he had defended her before his mother, the look on his face when she had walked away in Kensington, the raw honesty with which he now stood in her modest parlour and offered not a cottage, not hush money, but his name and his future. Suppose I accept, she said slowly. Will you resent me in years to come, when the novelty has faded and you remember that I began as a convenience? His expression softened into something almost unbearably tender. Lucy, my convenience would have been to marry some perfectly suitable girl with a flawless pedigree and no opinions. It would have kept my mother quiet and my life tidy. I did not. I chose you. Again and again, even when I pretended I had no choice. If you accept me, it will not be for convenience. It will be because I cannot imagine enduring another season without your merciless honesty at my side. Tears spilled over. That is a very odd declaration of love, my lord. I am a very odd man, he said. You have known this from the start. She drew a shaking breath. And my mother, my work. I will not abandon her to a stranger's care. You will not need to, he said. She may live with us, if she wishes it. Densmore House is more than large enough to accommodate a beloved mother-in-law, and if I ever treat her with less respect than I would accord the Archbishop of Canterbury, you have my leave to scold me before the servants. An unwilling smile curved her lips. That might almost be tempting on its own account. He stepped closer, very gently taking her hand. Lucy Trent, will you do me the honour of becoming my Marchioness? Not in pretence, not as an arrangement, but in truth? She looked down at his hand, warm around hers. At the beginning of all this, she had thought to sell a semblance of affection. Somewhere along the way, she had given her heart for nothing at all. On 2 conditions, she said. His brows rose. Name them. First, she said, voice steadying, that you never again speak of me as an employment, even in jest. I am not a task to be managed, Adrian. I am a person. His eyes softened. I will remember it every day of my life. Second, she continued, that you allow me in time to do something useful with the position you offer. There are so many women in my situation, gentlewomen with no means, no protection. I would not be the only one lifted from it and forget the rest. His mouth curved in something like wonder. I should have expected nothing less from you. Yes, we will do it together if you will. A fund, perhaps, or a home of some sort. You shall lead it. I shall sign the cheques. Her heart swelled. In that case, she whispered, yes, I will marry you. Relief, fierce and unguarded, flashed across his face. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to it with a reverence that stole her breath. Thank you, he said simply. She laughed, a little shakily. You may not thank me when you discover how opinionated a marchioness you have acquired. I have had a taste, he replied. I find it intoxicating. Society's appetite for scandal was gratified once more, only this time the tale had a different flavour. The Marquess of Densmore is engaged to that Miss Trent, after all. They say he went to her house in person. Very romantic, is it not? I always said there was something in the way he looked at her. At the next grand assembly, Adrian entered with Lucy on his arm, now wearing a simple yet elegant ring upon her finger, her head held higher than ever before. The Dowager Marchioness followed, her approval evident in the gracious nod she bestowed upon her future daughter-in-law. Lady Harbury attempted a cool greeting. Adrian, with all the weight of his title, bowed and said in a voice carrying further than chance alone would allow, I must thank you, Lady Harbury, for your contribution to our happiness. Without the urgency of the season, I might never have been driven to such decisive measures. Lady Harbury, who had been among those most eager to call Lucy an adventuress, went rather pink and murmured something about blessings in disguise. Lucy, catching the twinkle in the dowager's eye, nearly smiled. Later in the evening, as the orchestra struck up a waltz, Adrian turned to her. May I have this dance, my Marchioness-to-be? She met his gaze, feeling the familiar flutter in her chest, no longer fearful but joyous. You may, my lord. They moved onto the floor. As the music swelled and they turned together beneath the glittering chandeliers, Lucy felt the eyes of the world upon them, but for the first time she did not mind. Let them see, she thought. Let them see that a penniless gentlewoman could be loved, not despite her circumstances, but for the strength with which she bore them. Let them see that the ton's most eligible marquess, had chosen not the grandest fortune or the noblest name, but a woman who had once accepted an improper proposition in order to save her mother, and who had in the end demanded honesty, respect, and love in return. Adrian's hand tightened at her waist, his eyes never leaving hers. "Are you content?" he asked softly. She smiled, the answer shining in her gaze. "More than content. Only," he prompted. "Only I hope," she said with mock severity, "that you understand that whenever you are tempted to another scheme or arrangement, you will consult your wife first. I find myself very much attached to the peace of our household." He laughed, low and genuine, the laugh she had first drawn from him in Lady Grafton's hallway. "I shall remember. After all, it was my attempts to avoid matrimony that led me to you. I do not think I shall ever dare such rebellion again." "See that you do not," she replied, though her smile belied the sternness. They turned, the world spinning around them in candlelit splendour. For all the glitter, the gossip, the relentless churning of society's interest, Lucy knew that the true heart of this moment lay not in the eyes that watched, nor in the whispers that would follow, but in the steady beat beneath her hand where it rested over his heart. What had begun as a masquerade, a calculated shield against the ton, had become something far rarer, a partnership in which two imperfect souls had chosen each other freely, with open eyes and honest hearts. And as the waltz drew them together once more, Lucy Trent, soon to be the Marquess of Densmore, knew that this was no longer a part to be played. It was, quite simply, her happily ever after, the end. If you've enjoyed this story of love, redemption, and quiet courage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so you'll be the first to hear our next Regency romance on the Regency Gazette channel. Thank you for listening.